Hello, everyone, and welcome. Feel free to say hi in the chat and let us know where in the world you're logging in from. It's really great to see you. If you're not able to stream fully, please do refresh your screens. You should see us then. So my name is Jenny Garrett. I'm founder of the Diverse Executive Coach Directory, bringing together exceptional independent coaches from diverse backgrounds who specialize in supporting talented people to progress at work. I'm also an award-winning career coach, author, and leadership trainer. And as founder of Jenny Garrett Global, my company develops leaders across 3 key areas: inclusive leadership, entrepreneurial leadership, and AI-ready leadership. I've written a couple of books on equity and inclusion and co-host with my daughter the AI for Equity podcast, exploring how AI can drive equity rather than deepen inequalities. I want to say a big thank you on behalf of my social enterprise Rocking Your Teens. Those of you who donated to be part of today's webinar will have contributed to inspiring and raising aspirations in teenagers. And if you want to find out more about how you can support the social enterprise Rocking Your Teens, my colleague Tanya will add a link in the chat. So what are we talking about today? Well, what if the most valuable mentorship came from those who you least expect? This session explores how learning up from junior colleagues, especially those from underrepresented groups, can provide fresh perspectives and drive innovation. Our expert panel will discuss the benefits of reverse mentoring, how to create a successful reverse mentoring program, how to build trust and psychological safety when you are reverse mentoring, and also how you can leverage reverse mentoring for organizational change. So we've got wonderful executive coaches with us today: Hira, Jess, and Ola, all listed in the Diverse Executive Coach Directory, a directory which connects corporate organizations with coaches from the global majority or ethnically diverse backgrounds. And we're going to discuss reverse mentoring together and the power of learning up. You can find out more about the Diverse Executive Coach Directory and the amazing, qualified, credentialed, and very experienced coaches within it via the LinkedIn group or directly going to our website. So the format of today's session is that Hira, Jess, and Ola will briefly introduce themselves. I'll start off by asking them some questions, and then we'll open it up to you for your questions and your reflections, and we'll keep an eye on the chat throughout. So without further ado, I would love for Hira to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, thank you so much. A pleasure to be here. I'm Hira, as already introduced. I'm an executive coach, a leadership development and allyship specialist and speaker, and also founder of an organization called Advancing Your Potential, where we champion allyship programs and inclusive talent management initiatives. And also the award-winning author of 2 books, Her Way to the Top, A Guide to Smashing the Glass Ceiling, and Her Allies, a practical toolkit to help men lead through advocacy. And I have a couple of books on the way.
Lovely, thank you. And I've got a couple of books on the way. It does sounds very, very exciting. And Jess.
Hi, I'm Jess. Thank you very much, Jenny. It's lovely to be here. So I'm Jess Rogers, an executive and leadership coach, and I work with leaders, values-driven leaders, to really help them to strengthen their voice so that they can lead in an uncompromising way, lead in a way where they don't lose themselves, that they bring themselves to their work and so work from a place of passion and purpose as well. And like Hira, I'm not yet an author, but I do have a book coming in the new year. It's Healing and Hopeful, Turning Setbacks into Stepping Stones. And I'm delighted to be here.
Wonderful, thank you. And Ola, last but definitely not least.
Fab, lovely. Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm Ola. I work mainly in financial services. I grew up in a completely different culture and joined the workforce initially in financial services as a consultant, bringing a very pushy A-type personality, doing what I was told to progress. It worked, but it wasn't comfortable. Coaching has actually been a revelation, and therefore I decided to become a coach and been coaching for the last 5 years. I haven't written books, but I've done podcasts that can be found on Boon Books, talking about procrastination, talking about how you manage yourself and also balance with work. And I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today about reverse mentoring. Thank you.
Thank you. So as you can hear, we've got exceptional coaches with us today who are going to bring a lot of insight and wisdom. And I just want to jump right into the first question. So I'm wondering what the most surprising resistance you've encountered when introducing reverse mentoring to senior leaders has been, and how did you navigate that when you heard it or experienced it or received it? Because it, for me, it sounds like a bit of a no-brainer. So I'm always curious when we have resistance to things. I'm going to start with you, Hira.
Right. So I think surprisingly, the resistance which came was not from senior leaders, but from the non-dominant groups in one of the reverse mentoring programs I was involved in, and those selected to be reverse mentors. So I think many felt overwhelmed at the thought of mentoring someone in a position of significant authority. And there were concerns like, will they really listen to me? What if I say something wrong? Or in the case of women mentoring men, will this be taken seriously at all? So I think it wasn't a lack of willingness, but just a fear of getting it wrong, shaped by power dynamics and privilege and previous experiences of not being heard, and you would be I wasn't really I wasn't surprised, but yes, the fear did prove to be valid when the program was launched, because in one of the early sessions, the senior leader, the mentee, unintentionally took control of the conversation and began sharing their experiences, effectively reversing the purpose of reverse mentoring. So then, they had to be gently clarified. We had to gently clarify to them that in this space you are the mentee. Your role is to listen, to understand, to learn, not to teach or to fill the silence. So I think that those initial fears were actually sadly confirmed, and then we had to go through a coaching process to coach both the mentors and the mentees how to hold space and how to take up space.
I love that they've sort of reversed the reverse, which meant you had the status quo. So you had to really think about those power dynamics. But I think it's really interesting, as you said, which is it's not always who you think it is who's going to be the resistor of a process. And I think anyone who's looking for insight into how they introduce a process like that, it's worth, these are things I anticipate, but what if it's the opposite way round, is what you're helping us to think about. What about yourself, Ola? What have you experienced?
So what we set up was focused mainly on minority ethnic mentors who were in junior skills to mentor seniors from what was the majority culture. And interestingly enough, when we first started talking about this, there was enthusiastic support. However, as soon as we launched, everybody stayed stumped, completely stumped. So we had to intervene in terms of running some additional group sessions with the potential mentors to listen to them a bit more and dig a bit deeper into what the reticence was, what their concerns were. And what we found was that there was a concern that the conversations they had would be conflated with review discussions, career progression discussions. So we had to assess the groupings and make sure that there was a clarity around departments that people were in and functional specialisms as well, so that mentors were not mentoring mentees that might be their boss or their boss's boss, so that there was a clear separation. And once we were able to do this, people felt reassured, and we started to get some volunteers. It still took a little while, but at least it started to happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So that's, again, really interesting. So something about boundaries. How far will this go? Will this result in favoritism because these relationships might be built? However, the world of work is like that. You know, a lot is built on those relationships, and putting unlikely pairings together is what actually then challenges the way things have been done before. So it's quite interesting when something's formalized that happens normally anyway, that then we have resistance. So thank you. It's really interesting to hear all of your perspectives. And Jess, what about you? What surprising resistance have you encountered potentially, and how did you navigate it?
Yeah, I think it's where organisations have been quite hierarchical. And so there's that view that the knowledge comes from the top down. So those who are more senior know more automatically. And that's on both sides, like from the leaders and also those who are the potential mentors, the reverse mentors. And so the way to overcome that, the way that we overcame that, was really by reframing reciprocal mentoring as a two-way thing. So it was an exchange. So rather than just a role reversal, it was to really highlight the benefits from both perspectives of having that sort of reciprocal mentoring, reverse mentoring situation.
I love that. And I think there's more and more of it. You know, ultimately, we can all learn from each other, can't we? No matter who we are, no matter what stage of our career, no matter what our background. And that sense of remembering that sort of evens it out and levels the power a little bit. If we're both in the learning zone and it's reciprocal, then we have to have a bit of humility, I think. So thank you so much. And if anybody wants to share on social media about this really important conversation, please do use the hashtag reverse mentoring and the @diverse executive coach directory. And of course, you can tag all of our wonderful speakers. So moving on to question 2, if you could design a reverse mentoring program from scratch tomorrow, what's the unconventional element you'd include that most organizations miss? So yeah, what would you do that perhaps most organizations do not think about? I'm going to start with you, Ola, this time.
Okay, great. Well, I'm not sure how unconventional it is, but what we did in the matching profiles, we encouraged both the mentors and the mentees to share more about themselves outside of work. So things like tasting music, tasting food, holiday destinations, and even if they were willing, though we left those optional, challenges in their early lives, and information that they thought lots of people might not know about them. We wanted them to really, give the potential matches an opportunity to know a bit more about who they might be working with in this. And we found that it was a great help to breaking the ice because people quickly found that there were similarities, even though there were differences as well. And that meant that there was a foundation upon which to explore those differences, because you already had something that you felt, I did that, so I've been there, and so that just made it that much easier to get going.
It's a really good idea, isn't it? How do we build chemistry? How do we build connection? Investing the time in that as a foundation for the relationship moving forward makes absolute sense. And I see we've got some great people in the audience today, Junior and Janice and many others. So if you have experience with reverse mentoring, if you have a question, if you have a thought, please do add it into the chat. But I'm going to come to you next, Jess. What are your perspectives on, the unconventional element you might add to a reverse or reciprocal, using your language as well, a mentoring program?
Yeah, I think it's shared connection is really important. So I love to find ways to build in shared learning experience. So it can be something like attending a cultural event together or volunteering together in some way to really build that connection. And if I may, I'd like to share an example. So I once coached a woman who was recognised as high potential, and she had a young family. And her reverse mentee was a senior leader who was actually an older man who had grown children. And she was part of a parent's ERG. and they did a fundraising event in conjunction with a local school. So she really encouraged him to get involved. And this was something that he wouldn't particularly get involved in ordinarily, but she really encouraged him to get involved as to do something different in his way of giving back, because he wouldn't otherwise have been on his radar. And he did get involved. And what happened was it really strengthened their connection. And it also gave him a renewed sense of empathy, because his children were grown. He'd kind of forgotten about some of the challenges that come with having a young family. So somebody can be recognised as high potential, but they've got a lot going on outside of their work life as well that can impact, how they perform at work. So by being involved in that volunteering opportunity and sort of talking to people, it developed his empathy as the sort of reverse mentee, and that went on to strengthen their relationship. So I think those sorts of shared activities are really important.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing an example. And it also speaks to being a bit creative, doesn't it? I think sometimes it's sort of we're thinking in a really linear way, and we don't realize that actually if we do something a little bit different, that might take us a lot further down the road than we think, maybe than forcing an experience of getting to know each other. We have a joint experience. The person learns empathy without being told you need to be more empathetic. So really, really nice example. Thank you so much, Jess. And your perspective on it, Hira?
I love Jess's example, and also to Ola's point, it needs to be experiential, it needs to be immersive. And I think one of the mentoring programs that I was part of, what we did was, again, to involve, make sure that people had those experiences together, because I think you learn a lot that way. So what we did was we meetings where there were only women, networking events where they felt overlooked, even everyday scenarios, where gender dynamics subtly played out. This was a reverse mentorship program which involved men and women. So the aim was for mentees to feel what it's like to navigate the world through a different lens, just similar to what Jess has just shared, and not just hear about it. Because when you're in it, then I think it's the learning is so much more different. I think another thing which I asked some of the mentees to do, was to capture and present their learning journey, because usually, when you're doing leadership programs, people capture their journey, they share their insights. So we asked the mentees to record their biases and the discomfort and their aha moments, and to also share it back with the wider leadership team. Because I think when senior leaders have to articulate what they learned and where they got it wrong and how they will adjust going forward, I think it shifts mentoring from being passive listening to active accountability. And it definitely moves, I think, the conversation from what we call in allyship awareness to actions. And that's where the real change begins. So yeah, that is something which we did different when we did this reverse mentoring last year.
Thank you so much, Hira. It actually made me think a little bit about the fact that, so I like to journal gratitudes, and I'll go back at the end of the year and I'll look and I'll say, oh gosh, I was thankful for that. Oh, that was amazing. But if you don't write it down, you don't remember all of the things that you'd be thankful for. And in the same way, it could be really easy, I think, for a mentor or mentee to go through the whole experience and say, oh, I didn't really learn anything, when there were these key moments that they didn't take a point to capture. And I think that's really helpful in anything, isn't it? Whether you're experiencing coaching, reverse mentoring, a leadership program. Actually, how are you capturing these moments? Because we're all the time bombarded with information. We're moving at such a rate. We're multitasking, and I think those learning moments are easy to miss. And maybe that's going to be a competitive advantage in the future, to be able to notice how you learn, what you've learned, the difference you've made in your own growth. So I think that's a really great point. There's something in the chat from Junior here. I benefited from a reverse mentoring relationship before I became a coach. She helped me massively to quieten the noise in my head and decide on my next career move. And I helped her understand the nuances and complexities I was navigating as a Black man from the LGBTQ plus community, and also from a lower socio-economic background. We were the perfect match. So a real advocate here of reverse mentoring, working really well. Thank you, Junior, and thank you for sharing that experience. And if anyone else has experiences that they want to share in the chat, insights or questions. Questions are very, very, very much welcome. Please feel free to do so. So my next question to you is, when reverse mentoring relationships stall, or sometimes they might even fail, what are the early warning signs that you coach leaders to watch out for? And how can they course correct, if you believe that course correcting is even possible, actually? So what are those warning signs, and what are the challenges? So I will ask Jess first this time.
Yeah, I think it's when either party, particularly leaders, don't make the sessions a priority. Everybody's very busy and have competing priorities. But when the meetings get continually bumped from the diary, it's important to ask the leaders to really revisit the purpose of the relationship, and also, almost to recontract and establish why they're doing it, to get them back on track. So that's what I would say for course correcting.
Yeah, really good point. Any kind of relationship can do that, can't it? I think, a manager, staff member relationship, a friendship, you can sometimes stray into different directions, and just taking a pause and having a reset, I think is so useful, and saying, what are we meant to be doing here? Is this working for both of us? What can we do differently? I think that's so key. What about yourself, Hira? What are your thoughts on that?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, one of the tendency when you have like someone from a dominant, privileged senior background versus somebody from the other side, I think one of the issues is that sometimes people from the dominant group are accustomed to being the ones with the voice, while women and those from underrepresented groups have been conditioned to hold back. So I think if there's no active listening or humility or boundaries set in from the get-go, that it can become challenging. So I think it's really important to create psychological safety. And also, I think what is most important is to have honest conversations rather than polite conversations, because if either party is holding back to avoid discomfort or growth, or the learning isn't really happening. And I think one last, that's too many red flags, sorry. Another red flag is, I think, when mentors, I did recently a LinkedIn post on this, when mentors begin to shape their mentees in their likeness, so trying to replicate their perspective or experiences rather than broadening them. So I think reverse mentoring isn't about creating a mini protege of yourself. It's about expanding awareness. So I think those are the things which we need to look out for: psychological safety, balanced dialogue, and diversity of input.
So helpful, and it makes me smile, because actually a lot of the literature you'll read will say protege. It will say sponsor and protege, or mentor and protege. So actually people can set it up thinking, I'm creating a mini me, because I'm perfect in every way. So this will help them be the same. And actually that's probably where the literature is a bit out of date. Because in a world where we want authenticity, where we're looking for people to hopefully bring the best parts of themselves into work, the last thing that we need is for that. So I think that's such a helpful perspective that you're bringing to it. And Ola, what do you think?
So in my experience, the stalling part happened usually at the beginning, and it was around a bit like Jess and Hira noticed. It was about missed meetings. It was about confidence of the mentor, usually, in not being where it needs to be. And what we then therefore started doing was, as soon as we noticed that a meeting was missed, we would touch base. We'd start with the mentor, so the more junior person in the relationship, to see what the reason was for that missed meeting, and just really take that opportunity to address the concerns, provide reassurance, and usually in those conversations we can find out if there's anything that's going awry. So there was one example where the mentor felt like in the conversation, the initial conversation she had, she felt a bit lectured, and she wondered whether it was going to be right for her. So therefore we then, went to have a conversation with the mentee around, what they thought this relationship was about, and really reset the scene, like we said, contracting about, what this was going to be, and really helped the mentee, think about their power in that relationship, even though it was supposed to be a reverse mentor relationship, just because of their position, they were bringing that level of power. It didn't suddenly disappear, so they just needed to bear that in mind in the conversations that they were having. And that sort of helped to resolve that particular situation.
Thank you. I think the theme that I'm getting from all of you is the care and consideration that's needed when you're setting up reverse or reciprocal mentoring, that you can't just put two people together and say, go. And buy, and let's hope this works, that there's a lot of setup. There might be confidence building in the person who's junior or from an underrepresented group to be able to mentor the other person. The other person needs to be an active listener, needs to have some humility, but also the facilitating of the conversation feels important. Boundaries, contracting, resetting, and sometimes mediating. I'm also is coming through here that ultimately people might be listening and say, the thing that, why couldn't they just say, I felt I was being lectured to? But actually it's not always that easy to say what you want to say in the work environment, because of power dynamics, because of discomfort. Lots of people aren't capable or very good at giving feedback either, and they're not sure about reactions. And so having someone who really facilitates this process, and I think someone who has the coaching skills to do so, feels really important in this. And it's really made me think even more strongly that the coach, the setting up, the having an advisor, having some wisdom around this will stop you having problems in the long term, because if you get it right from the beginning. So thank you so much. Janice has a point here. She says, what started out for me as a mentoring relationship over time became more reciprocal as trust grew between us. I think respect plays an important part too. Yeah, really good point, isn't it? Respecting of each other. What do you think?
Sorry, I wanted to just add to Janice's point. I think that's a really good point. We were literally just discussing how to build trust a while ago, Jess and I. I think it starts off with respect, because you don't really know the person when you're starting out the relationship. So that is it's based on respect, and then eventually it becomes like reciprocal, because then eventually you are it's a two-way thing, and you learn to trust the person. The trust doesn't come easily in the first interaction, I would suppose. I think in the first interaction it's all based on respect, and eventually then as the trust grows, then it becomes more balanced, and reciprocity is involved.
Yeah, and I think all of the activities that you were all speaking about in the beginning were what you do to build trust, get to know each other, go to activities together, build some wider knowledge where you feel more comfortable to share with each other. So yeah, thank you. And thanks, Janice, for adding that point about respect. So my final question, and so please do add questions if you would like to, or thoughts in the chat. Beyond diversity and inclusion metrics, what unexpected transformation have you witnessed in leaders or organizations that made you think this is why reverse mentoring really matters? And I'm going to start with Jess on that one.
Yeah, it's something that's come up. You talked about the skill of the facilitator, the coach, in setting the relationship up, and something that I always do at the end of the relationship is do that kind of reflection, get both parties to reflect and reflect out loud. And something that struck me with the example I shared earlier that made me think this is why we do it was the senior leader talked a lot about humility. Because as he progressed and sort of become a senior leader, he kind of lost sight of what was going on in the wider picture. And, humility is such an important trait for any good leader, but it's not necessarily something that a leader will recognize in themselves or be able to articulate for themselves. But through the process, this leader that in this process was really able to articulate that, because he had lost sight of some of the challenges that people at the lower stage or earlier stage of their career, shall I say, might be navigating. Because as well as, as you're going through your career at particular stages, life also starts lifing a lot, doesn't it? Particularly in that middle phase where you've got, caring responsibilities, be it aging parents, be it children, whatever it might be, as well as really trying to grow your career. So as a result of the reverse mentoring, the senior leader had firsthand almost insight and data into that. And so he was reminded that, actually people are navigating all of this and still being high performers. This person still being a high performer, still working to a really good standard. And he was really humbled by this. And so it made him really mindful of that, there are so many unseen barriers that those earlier in their career are facing, and to remember that when he was working with them and recognizing talent. And for me to hear him actually articulate that was like, yeah, this is why we do this, because it's so important.
Sounds fantastic. And again, it's so much better than saying step into their shoes, because it's really hard to imagine what someone else's lived experience is. But yeah, getting as close to it as you possibly can, I think, is really important. So yeah, thank you. Great example. And yourself, Ola, what do you think?
Okay, so we had a session where we had both the mentee and the mentor talk to the mentee's department about their experience of reverse mentoring. And the mentee was the mentee was head of department, and he was very open about some of the prejudices that he had held previously before he, entered this mentoring relationship. And the way his understanding and the way his views had changed as a result, he laid it quite bare to the department. And the return mentor was also very open about her surprise about some of the similarities that she found between herself and her mentee. She also talked about how she now felt much more comfortable about engaging with senior people, because she realized that they were just like her. But the most important thing, though, was that the audience, in the department, fed back that it made their head of department seem much more human. They much more relatable, much more visible. And it just meant that, the relationships going forward were just much more comfortable. And just seeing that, it just made me feel that, this is why I do this. so yeah, that was great.
I love it. Actually, just listening to you, the shift in your energy, the way you talked about it, the big smile. In fact, even the way the light is shining on you, it felt And I think that's something people forget. As coaches, we get so much joy from our work. We get so much joy from seeing other people grow and develop and learn, don't we? It's a wonderful job to have, but it's also one that I think people don't always realize how much difference it's making. So it's really great to hear these unexpected benefits from all of you. Do you have anything to add, Hira, for that question?
I think it was just in the reverse mentoring programs that I have been part of, involved in, or led. I think what I've seen is just an appreciation and recognition of each other's lived experience. Because when you get into these intimate conversations, to be frank, the one that I'm speaking about last year, it didn't start off that well. And they actually had to, because I think it was happening on a very superficial level, and the feedback wasn't great. So then they actually had to put a third party facilitator just to observe the conversation. And I think what they saw was that the parties weren't feeling safe openly sharing without fear of judgment or consequences. So then they intervened and they gave them some coaching advice. And also the mentee wasn't truly listening. They were steering the conversation. And it's only when the third party person came and observed, right, and reminded them their role is to learn, not to impart knowledge, that they were able to recognize what it was. And it was also, even in fact, the mentor didn't recognize it. It was just when the third party was there. So it was a very good learning experience. And obviously it evolved in something beautiful, and eventually the relationship was very productive and they learned a lot. But sometimes retrospection is hard. You don't realize, because you're so deeply ingrained with in certain behaviors, because either because you're used to talking or you're not used to talking and just listening, that you don't realize that you're doing anything wrong or different. So yeah, it was a lovely experience. I think eventually it was just being able to appreciate each other's lived experiences, and also looking inwards and looking at the biases, and what preconceived patterns of behaving are we used to, and how can we change that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? That sometimes there's some saying, isn't there? If you behave like someone's watching you, you behave at your best, don't you? And I wonder, not everyone might have that opportunity to have a third party observing them. But I think that if we took that as a practice, and in a reverse mentoring relationship, to say, if someone was watching this, what would they say? Am I being the best mentor or mentee? Am I holding back? Am I being honest? Are we safe? Do we need to name that we don't feel safe right now? Do we need to name that we need to develop the relationship more before we can do this well? Maybe that would be really helpful. So I think that's, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking that act, it's not an easy thing to do. And it's something as a coach that people, we try to develop. But the action of just maybe having an empty chair in the room and thinking, there's someone watching me. How could I behave at my very best might help and bring that into the reverse mentoring relationship. So thank you for
Sorry, I was just saying there are certain techniques in certain programs and coaching programs where they actually ask you to literally step outside and look from outside and see what's going wrong. And I think that's very helpful. I mean, obviously you definitely won't get a third party facilitator every time, because this was a one-off situation. But if, to your point, Jenny, if we could do that, then I think that's very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I think those are Gestalt techniques, aren't they, that we're talking about. So we've got a question from a point from Junior. We also need the mentors to be brave, curious, and culturally aware, not scared to talk about topics and barriers linked to gender, ethnicity, beliefs, etc. If we shy away from this and just talk business, we lose the impact. I find this happens when someone is told that they need to be a mentor rather than approaching it themselves. Yeah, I think he's making some really good points there, isn't he? And yeah, this idea of just talking business, you're talking to a person and the person is a whole person. And so if they can't bring their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, their gender, whatever it is, into the room, then you're not really, how can you really talk business? You're talking to a part of them about business. And I don't think that can be as impactful. So yeah, a great point.
Jenny, can I just also, to that point, I think that's why it's really important to rather than just tell people they're going to be mentors or mentees, is to get people together and then contract how they're going to work together from the outset, and speak about the fact that we're going to not just be talking about business. This isn't a relationship, a transactional relationship, it's transformational potentially. And so actually contract that from the outset, so that you start to create that safe space. Obviously, the safe space comes with time, but if you contract for it, then it's more likely to come than if you just assume it.
Great point. Love that. I think that's a bit of a quote Jess moment. It's not transactional, it's transformational. So fantastic. Thank you. So we have a question from Janice. How do you persuade skeptical leaders to invest their time and energy in reverse or reciprocal mentoring? Whoever wants to answer that.
If I can just say, I think the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So if they could show case studies of previous relationships that have been successful, or look at best practices of different organizations, and then perhaps these leaders who are skeptical might be influenced to try it out themselves. And also just sharing the benefits overall of how good it is, and it's not just good for the people on the other side. It's a great learning experience for them too. So if they see it as something where they will also benefit, and it's not just a one-sided thing, I might they might be more encouraged to put in the time and energy.
I'd like to build on that actually, because I think that the word persuade and also the word skeptical points perhaps to a culture where the benefits of reverse mentoring are perhaps not valued. So if we are dealing in a culture where it's it's wanted, people want to understand, people want to develop each other, people want to learn from each other, then we perhaps shouldn't be dealing with skeptical people and should be needing to persuade. If it's the latter, though, if it's the fact that the culture is just not there, then perhaps it's the culture we need to look at first before we start. And this might be a tool to get there, but really the values and the expectations from the leadership would need to be explored a lot more before we foist reverse mentoring on them.
Yeah, great point. Is your culture ready for it? Will it land well? Is there some work you need to do before you even get to be able to do this? Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, really good point. Any other last points on that?
I mean, this is not a point related to this particular question, but I also wanted to mention something earlier, which I forgot to mention. I think confidentiality is also very important in this relationship, because there has been an example of somebody who was in a mentoring relationship, shared something in confidence, and then that was just shared by the other party with a lot of other people. So I think it's also important for conversations to remain confidential, because trust is the foundation. And if confidentiality is breached, or concerns are if either party shares concerns which are shared outside that particular room without consent, then the relationship breaks down instantly.
Yeah, completely. Thank you. And I think that is so dangerous, isn't it? That sort of if you feel that you disclosed in something in a meeting, and then you see the person in the corridor and you just have this sense that they've said it to someone else, that is really awful. And it doesn't just damage that relationship, it damages the whole concept of reverse mentoring in the whole organization as well and beyond. So it has far-reaching effects if you don't maintain that confidentiality. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much. Janice just added a final point, which was would it be helpful to distinguish between psychological safety and comfort? The two don't always go together. Really helpful thing to consider. We don't have to be comfortable, but we do need to feel psychologically safe, I think. And actually discomfort is part of that journey of learning, and embracing it is really important. Thank you so much. It doesn't seem that we have more questions. So it's been a really great, I think, far-reaching conversation. I think it's helped people in a really practical way to consider reverse mentoring. We haven't gone into the theory of it. What we've talked about is what difference does it make? How, what can get in the way, and how can you do this well? And I think that's what people really want to know beyond the theory. I think if they want support setting up reverse mentoring, they come to you, and you really help them with the rest. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. It's been, as always, super informative. I want to say a huge thank you to Jess, to Hira, to Ola. I want to say thank you for the interaction from those watching and those who watch this on replay, because I know a lot of you do. And if you want to find out more about the Diverse Executive Coach Directory, a directory that connects corporate organizations with coaches from global majority or ethnically diverse backgrounds. We will put the link in the chat for you. My colleague Tanya will do that, and also the link to our page, our LinkedIn page as well. I think we might have one more event coming up for the year in December. And again, I think Tanya will put it in the chat as well. But we're going to have a whole new series starting in January. And it's really about how the help of a coach can make a difference. So it's a whole series, how a coach can help. So how can a coach help me with my imposter syndrome? How can a coach help me find a new job and pivot, for example? And we're going to have a whole new series of 10 wonderful webinars next year, really practical and really there to help you as an individual. Lastly, your feedback informs our future webinars. So please do provide feedback via the link in the chat. Again, my colleague Tanya will add it. It will only take you a minute to complete it, but it helps us. We do look at it. We do take your feedback on board, and it informs what we do in the future. So last but not least, I want to say a very big thank you. I hope you can see that we're getting some support in the chat. Hamlin has said, good discussion, thank you. Despite best efforts, there's always a power imbalance. How can that be mitigated? So there is a further question, but I think we've spoken to that quite a lot. If anyone does have a burning point they want to make with regard to it, you can, but I feel like we've spoken to it. No? Okay, Hamlin. Hopefully, if you joined a little bit later, you can watch the replay and hopefully we've answered your question. If not, reach out to any of us as coaches. So Tanya will put the Survey Monkey in the chat. A huge thank you